Chapter 2 Grandmas Don't Blackmail. It was Grandma Gerd, calling collect from Malacca, Malaysia. For an artist, she sure had a good sense of timing. Dad chewed a yet more Tums as she insisted on being put on speakerphone. Her exuberant voice boomed up at us from the coffee table. Grandma never talked when she could bellow. "Let me guess, it's your hour of refraction. How's my Leonardo?" Dad hates his flowery given name and insists on being called Leon. Not that Grandma Gerd ever does. "Reflection," he said in a compressed voice. A series of throaty chuckles, then, "Happy birthday, kiddo! How does it feel to be sweet 16? Then, without waiting for my answer, "So, did you get kissed?" "She'll have more than enough time for boys after college, Gertrude," Mom said, civilized yet squelching. "Shame! Sweet 16, never been kissed. So, how did you celebrate? Tell me you at least had a big party." Mom said, "Vassar had an intimate gathering after the Latin triathlon. Some very nice girls from her—" "Girls! Bah!" Mom opened her mouth, then closed it. "So, kiddo, what do you think of my gift?" But before I could respond, Mom said with a plastic smile, her dimples now 2 craters, "It was very thoughtful of you, Gertrude. Only a month and a half late instead of your usual 5. Unfortunately, it's not on the list." "The list? What list?" "Vassar's summer has been planned out far in advance. The list includes AP English, Advanced Latin Camp, a submolecular theory course, and what she misses this summer she can make up the next." "Earth to Grandma! I had the next 2 summers meticulously planned. All advanced placement courses and extracurricular activities. If I don't keep up with those courses, I won't make a 5.3 GPA, which happens to be the new 4.0, I said. And then Wendy Stupacker will get valedictorian. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Have you ever floated down the Mekong on a rice boat, lulled to sleep by the rustling bamboo? The 3 of us exchanged long, suffering looks. Have you ever climbed the ruins of Nom Bakeng in Angkor to experience the most mind-blowing Technicolor sunset of your entire life? I mentally squared my shoulders. Grandma Gerd can be a bit unnerving. Valedictorian and a 5.3 GPA are very big deals. In case you weren't aware, they mean entry into Vassar and Ivy League grad schools like "Would civilization end as we know it if you went to a state school?" A collective intake of breaths. A state school? "Come on, kiddo! Don't you want to live, feel, explore, experience?" "Gertrude, even you know this is impossible on such short notice," Dad interrupted. He never called Grandma Gerd mother. Ever. "Balls. She'll have 2 weeks to plan. That's more than enough time." "Technically, it's 1 week and 6 days, he replied. Mom gave Dad a nudging look. She often has to do this because he's a conflict avoider. If someone cuts in front of him in line at the DMV, he'll pretend he didn't notice. If a waitress accidentally adds an extra creme brulee to his bill, he'll pay it. Anything to sidestep confrontation. Reluctantly, Dad cleared his throat and said, "Although it's a very kind offer, Gertrude, it's absolutely out of the question." "Coupi dua, thanks." We could hear the clinking of glasses and some static then. "Well, Leonardo, you're forcing me to bring it up. In mixed company, no less." "It?" Mom clutched my arm, her clear polished nails digging into my skin. "Vassar, would you fill up the car?" It was a command, not a request. Her dimples had completely disappeared. "Don't go to Gus's gas. His tanks aren't calibrated correctly," said Dad automatically. "And take Franklin Avenue. It's 2 minutes faster than Maine." Usually there's nothing I like better than to drive the Volvo anywhere now that I've got my driver's license. But I wanted to witness Grandma Gert's failed attempts to coerce my parents. Grandma Gert's voice again broke the silence. "Hello? Anybody there? Leonardo, it's time she knew the truth about—" But Mom and Dad simultaneously grabbed for the phone before she could finish. Truth about what? Well, I'd know soon enough. Mom and Dad never kept secrets from me. As I carefully navigated the Volvo wagon out of our cul-de-sac towards the nearby gas station, convenience store, coffee shop, not Gus's, I took offense at what Grandma Gert seemed to be hinting about my life. That just because I hadn't left the continent or backpacked through Europe, I wasn't well-rounded. Could I help the fact that Dad is deathly afraid of flying? Or that Mom's abhorrence of the outdoors, too many variables, prevented camping from ever being on the agenda? So I hadn't traveled. Who cared? How could that omission remotely affect my life? Or, more importantly, my academic record. After all, just how many museums, galleries, symphonies, and plays had I gone to? Just how many books had I read? If I wasn't cultured, who on earth was? And her insinuation that I was somehow abnormal because I hadn't yet been kissed infuriated me. None of my friends had boyfriends yet. The only girl at the Seattle Academy of Academic Excellence with any dating experience was Wendy Stupacker, who'd discovered boys in 6th grade, which certainly hadn't helped her procrastination any. Photographic memory and photogenic looks. Tough life. I returned as swiftly as the speed limit allowed. After parking with precision, I took care to slip through the front door noiselessly. Good. They were still on the phone. So wrapped up in their debate they didn't hear the car. I tried to eavesdrop, but could only make out a random word here and there. Bubble. Birth. Too young. Rubber ball. Dying. Egg. Then Mom hissed, "Gertrude, it's blackmail and you know it!" The words dying and blackmail especially intrigued me. That is until Mom said, "Is she back yet?" "I'll check," said Dad. Anything to get out of a Grandma Gert Althea confab. I darted back into the kitchen and yanked open the refrigerator just as Dad appeared in the doorway. Beads of sweat dotted his freckled forehead, and ink blots of perspiration stained his gray polo shirt. "Vassar, come in here, please." "Sure," I said with faux nonchalance as I popped open a can of apple juice. I followed Dad back through the kitchen into the living room. Mom wouldn't meet my gaze. She concentrated on doodling in her Journal of Excellence. I'd never seen her doodle before. This was a rough drawing of a pear. When she noticed I noticed, she quickly turned the page. Dad blotted his face with a paper napkin, leaving a tiny shred of blue stuck just above his eyebrow. I bent over the speakerphone. "Hello, Grandma Gert, I'm back." "She hung up," said Mom, her voice shaking. "Leon, why don't you tell Vassar what we've decided?" They made room between them on the couch, so I squeezed in. With a quivering hand, Mom tucked an errant strand of hair back into my ponytail. Dad patted my knee, then ran his hand through his red hair, patted my knee, smoothed his hair, patted, smoothed. I'd never seen them so agitated, so awkward, so unspore-like. Not even last year, when Wendy Stupacker beat me in the regional spelling bee with ectoxine and went on to place 4th at the Nationals in D.C. "Yes, well, Vassar, we've decided that a trip with Grandma Gert through Southeast Asia, that such a trip would be invaluable. Perhaps help you formulate, would heighten..." Dad stumbled on in a highly inefficient manner. What he said was of no consequence. What was important was that they wanted me to abandon my scholastic endeavors for a mere vacation. As soon as Dad brought his babble to a halt, I said as much. They carefully replied that they thought it would be good for me to go, that I should go, that I must go. What? Were these the same parents who'd previously said the words Grandma Gerd with the same note of horror they said unsystematic or waste of time or unplanned? Who were now authorizing her to take me, their only child, into the intrepid jungles of Southeast Asia, when they'd just dissuaded me from attending a public school dance a mere 6 blocks away? But what made you change your minds? You never change your minds. Dad dug in his breast pocket. Empty, he moaned. Still not quite meeting my eyes, Mom said, "Think how much it would mean to Grandma Gerd to spend some quality time with her only grandchild." I could tell it pained her to say it. It just didn't make sense. Having a daughter named Vassar not get into Vassar would be sacrilege, not to mention embarrassing. And it would disprove Mom's theory. If an applicant to Vassar, the elite women's college, was named Vassar in addition to having a stellar academic record, how could they possibly refuse her? All her advanced planning would be for nothing. And I'd be known as that loser Vassar Spore who goes to state. One of Mom's biggest regrets was not getting accepted to Vassar College. She felt life would have been just that much better if her dream had been fulfilled. She vowed if she had a daughter, she'd guarantee she got in. And whether she chose to attend or not would be entirely up to her, but she'd have the option I never had. But now suddenly that wasn't a priority? What on earth could Grandma Gerd possibly blackmail my parents about? It was time to be direct. Is she blackmailing you? Is egg a code word? Mom froze, teacup halfway to her mouth. Eavesdropping is an odious habit, Vassar. I'm ashamed of you. Odious, echoed Dad weakly. His face was so white, his freckles looked like chocolate sprinkles floating on a latte. So, I processed as I went along, what you're saying is that I have to go on this trip at the sacrifice of my academic record. Mom's face crumpled. She let out a little wheeze. The next thing I knew, she was racing upstairs to their bedroom and slamming the door. Excuse me, Vassar. Dad unsteadily got to his feet, then slowly climbed the stairs, keeping a tight grip on the banister. The American Heritage Dictionary defines a nervous breakdown as a severe or incapacitating emotional disorder, especially when occurring suddenly and marked by depression. Mom had never broken down before, as far as I could remember. She'd been firmly in one piece, with never so much as a chip missing. Dad closed and locked the door to their bedroom, but I could still hear uncontrollable sobbing. This from a woman who'd never shed a tear in my presence. Not even the faintest appearance of moisture when Dad had read The Yearling aloud. I could barely make out Dad's low, consoling murmuring. Then Mom's voice escalated. "She'll find out! You know she'll find out! Gertrude will tell!" Dad's gentle but firm voice interrupted. "No, she won't. Even Gertrude wouldn't stoop." Then it became muffled and indistinguishable. After half an hour, Dad abruptly hurried out of the bedroom, carefully closing the door behind him, and drove off in the Volvo. He squealed into the driveway 20 minutes later and dashed into the house, clutching a white paper bag in one hand and a traffic ticket in the other. Back into the bedroom, locking the door behind him. 14 minutes, 36 seconds later, the crying stopped. I was tempted to call or text message Amber, Denise, and Laurel, but I dreaded imparting the information that the Spore household was not what it seemed. My friends had always looked up to my parents, wished they were their parents. "With parents like yours, who needs willpower?" they'd say. Wendy Stupacker hadn't been as complimentary. She said my parents were weirdos and that my mom was overcompensating for hidden inadequacies, and that dad was uxorious. But I knew she was just jealous because both her parents were major players in the finance industry and never had time for her. I sat motionless on the couch. What on earth could transform my normally cucumber-esque mother into a character from a Tennessee Williams play, and my normally law-abiding father into a lawbreaker? The big secret, that's what. I felt as if I'd returned from school and accidentally walked into the wrong house. I felt out of context. I felt numb.